And we're back on another exciting episode of what's that? What's that ringing? Ooh, I'm not quite sure what's going on here.
What am I doing here? What are we
Uh,
doing?
you seem wise to me. I feel like you might know what's going on. Where am I? Who am I?
Um, we're not in a cage. We're on Rigel VII. Is that
Wait
where
a
we were?
second. Let me just beat this gag to death. I am Starfleet So Hale. I run this podcast. I am Starfleet So Hale. I run this podcast. I wore this uniform just to do that, and it's red like Ortega's, so I'm happy. But I did mix up a badge, but it's nice to see you, Ken.
No. Thank you. Wearing a red shirt on a podcast is a dangerous thing to do. Red shirt. Starfleet, so hail. I am so excited to be here. This is the first, I mean, I obviously know you well from all of our interactions, but it's the first time we're one-on-one on inviting me to your show. I'm honored.
One
Thank
on
you so
one,
much.
mono e mono.
Yep. Yep, that's it.
No, I'm actually really excited to talk to you about this one because this episode is a great example of how Strange New Worlds is connecting very solidly to like the cage. This was like from a reference in the cage, right? Like, and
Absolutely.
then I know Rigel Seven's a big deal. Well, we didn't do the episode summary yet, so do you want to do it? Do you want the honors of the episode summary? And I don't know if you've seen, but I'm trying to keep them under 5 minutes. Like it's a personal
Yeah.
challenge. But if
Why
not,
not?
I'll do it.
We could tag team the episode
Oh
summary.
yeah,
How's that
let's do a
sound?
tag team of the summary. All
Yeah.
right, so uh, I'll kick it off, and then you can
Okay.
just kind of like jump in whenever you want. So was it 5 years? Oh, we have like late night trash. That's cool. I don't know if the
It
audience
was.
can
It
hear
was.
the truck.
It was 5
Five.
years ago.
There we go. So 5 years ago, Captain Pike was on a mission where he unfortunately almost lost Spock, and in the effort to get Spock to medical attention, he had to make some decisions, and he was told that certain members of the team went down, meaning KIA. So he took that as a took that to heart, I guess, and made a decision as captains do, and ended up living his best captain's life till Starfleet took a picture uh, 5 years later and said, "Hey, WTF?" And then they realized, wait a second, who did we last send on that mission? And it happened to be the Enterprise. I thought that was really funny that Starfleet was just like, "You go fix your mess." Anyway,
Yeah,
so they
Enterprise has
get
to clean up its mess.
they
Yeah.
get evidence that the Kalar have started to somehow the Kalar, the residents of Rigel VII, have somehow started to emulate Federation designs, which means there's cultural contamination, which means they have to go investigate. So that's the thing that they're going to do. Uh, and then go ahead.
Yeah, that's right. And so they end with that. But before that, you had Captain Patel and Pike
Oh yeah,
having
I
a
totally
date,
forgot about that whole
right?
thing.
Yep,
It's true.
they were having a date when Pike was making up some new sauce using tomatoes in the new sauce, and pulls out a bottle from Chateau Picard, which was a nice piece there. And they have a date. They keep getting interrupted by their various bridge needing their captains. Um, but during the course of that date, Battelle finds out that she was passed over for promotion to Commodore. And
Yeah.
Pike feels guilty because feels that that promotion was passed up because of her role in trying to help Una, or getting involved in the Una lawsuit that we saw in the second episode of the season. And so now Pike is saying, well, I'm messing up your career. Maybe it's time for us to back off. But before that even happened, she gave him a gift, which was a pendant that he wears, and that is super critical to the episode. But she's like, your timing is perfect. And she gets huffy and she leaves and then warps away. And then they have the Rigel VII briefing, which you described. And after that briefing, Una happens to notice that the other ship warped away pretty fast. And then Pike says, "Yeah, we had a little bit of a to do." And then Una says, "Well, you're doing what you do, Captain. You're pushing people away." And he's like, "I don't do that." And yes, you do. And makes a comment about everyone needs joy in their life,
That was
which,
nice.
which was interesting. So,
On top of that, we finally get the Mortegas we were teased about, but
mhm.
I don't know how you felt, Ken, but still want even more
Yes,
Ortegas. But we'll talk about that in more detail. But we do get well before all that, the away team consists of
the landing party. The
the landing.
landing party.
The
Yes.
is that
Yeah,
a pet peeve? Like,
it is. Well,
like
they say it. It's interesting because away team was not a reference until the next generation. Up
right?
until that
I
point, it
realize
was
that
landing party all
landing
the time.
party. That's
So,
interesting.
yeah.
So do you think what is your in-universe explanation for why Starfleet stopped using landing party and started using away team?
I think it's because it didn't always involve the concept of landing. So, away is a more descriptive away from the ship, which isn't necessarily always landing on a planet. So maybe they felt away team was more encompassing of a term than landing party. But landing party was the phrase that was used all the time on the
All
original.
right. Well, you'll probably have to correct me a few more times, but I
That's all
don't
right. I'm
mind.
used to it. And anyone who's and any of our friends from who knows that this is a pet peeve, and they're like, okay, they're like, can get over it. But yeah,
That's all right.
yeah,
I'll oblige you. I don't mind calling it a landing party. I'm
yeah.
perfectly happy to go along with it. So, anyways, the landing party um, start their mission, which is to kind of get to the castle and do some reconnaissance and figure out what's going on. But some weird stuff starts happening right away. Like to Laan, she loses like what 6 hours.
Yeah, she loses 6 hours, but it's never really explained if that's what actually happens if she loses all of that time. I guess that's what happens. But the question is, was she sort of zombified when she first heard the tinnitus thing in the shuttle?
I actually have an explanation for this
Okay.
because it's a real function that occurs in humans. I suffer from it. So, uh, being blacked out drunk is something that's like apparently what happens is normally your short term memory, which is about 3 minutes, 4 minutes
Hmm.
worth of memory, um, normally it transfers that into your long term memory,
Yeah.
just like seamlessly. It's all done with chemicals and hormones and electricity in your brain. For some people, when they drink, it's fine. They get a little tipsy and then they pass out. For other people, um, the alcohol too quickly it'll inhibit the part that like mechanism that writes the short term to the long term. So you're living in 4 minutes. And I, in my not teenage, because I didn't start drinking until I was 24, but in my the 20s, I would be drunk, blacked out drunk for hours and not
Hmm.
remember anything. And people were telling me about like these cool things I was talking about or saying. So like it's an interesting place to be, and that's what it felt like when they did that jump cut from her packing the equipment in the shuttle to I was like, "Oh my god, that's what it feels like when you black out from being drunk."
Wow.
So, yeah, I know it's a kids don't if there's any kids watching this, there shouldn't be. This
No,
is a this is a PG-13 show. So, but if you are watching, make sure not to drink alcohol.
right. A quick
It's not.
PSA: don't drink, kids.
Don't drink, kids.
Yeah.
Adults, drink responsibly. Don't
Yeah.
get blacked out drunk. So I figured out how to mitigate it, and it's actually a good thing because I haven't been blacked out drunk in years. It's the speed at which you drink. So I cannot
Yeah.
drink alcohol fast. I have to drink slowly, and so now I've figured out the formula, the amount I can drink, how fast I can drink, so that I just reach passed out, like ready to go to bed, you know, that kind of dreamy state,
That's
and I'm good to
that's the
go.
way to be if you need to do it that way.
But
Yeah.
it's a dangerous thing. But that's what I thought of, is that whatever this asteroid that landed 1,000 years ago, whatever kind of they called it. I think Ortega says there was some kind of or Spock said there might be radiation
Hmm.
from the planet that's doing it, but I
Right.
thought of it more as a field, maybe a radioactive field, perhaps, but a field. So it was like constantly affecting you, and the effects were like compounding. And what it affects in humanoids is that short-term memory writing to the long-term memory. That's why it's reversible. When you get out of the field, it's you start to come to. When you're in the field, your memory goes to only short-term memory. So that's my
No, I
scientific
think that makes a lot of
uh
sense. And so during that 6 hours,
yeah,
Leon was able to interact with Mbenga and Pike and all, and so they didn't notice anything wrong. It's just that she wasn't able to hard write
rem-
the memories into her long-term memory.
precisely.
So
Yeah.
okay,
And
gotcha.
that's happening, and it gets worse and worse the longer you're in the field. And that's why some of them, they don't have any long-term memory, for like months or years or whatever, like it's crazy. So,
Yeah, it's
yeah.
interesting. Although they the comment or the term the forgetting, your forgetting was hard.
Well,
You had
because
hard.
that's what made me think of a field and like different
Yeah.
like kind of strength levels. So whatever causes the forgetting happens like at the evening time, and that must be when the field is at its strongest for whatever
No,
reason.
that's
Maybe
probably true.
yeah.
It's a good
And
thinking.
the other thing that was cool about this is that we know in Star Trek: The Next Generation and Deep Space Nine, isn't Rigel VII like a travel to destination, like it's like a touristy thing, right?
I
So
think
that me.
it's
Oh,
they
go ahead.
referenced
Sorry.
it in Picard season three.
Right, there was a mission. Right,
Yeah,
right.
mission to Rigel 6 and Picard says 7 to
Seven.
in the first episode, the next generation episode of season 3 when Riker and Picard are sitting at in a 10 forward. And then I believe there was a tourism poster or something equivalent on Deep Space 9 where it basically said visit Rigel 7.
And it showed the matte painting
Yeah.
from Rigel VII in the cage, right? Or
Yeah.
yeah, it was in the cage. Yeah, they have that beautiful shot.
Mhm.
Um, but that to me said to me my in my mind it says that once, because at the end of this episode we stopped doing the summary, we're just talking about it now,
Yeah,
it's
we're just
fine.
talking about it.
But
We can watch the
but like
episode. We're
to
good. Just,
me, yeah,
yeah,
you saw the episode, that's why
right.
you're here. So to me it says that when the asteroid was removed from the planet and the field was back in the asteroid belt or whatever, and not on the planet, that the residents like the Kalar recovered from it and were able to quickly advance after that, like because they
Mhm.
had no more hindrance against their intellect.
Right.
uh from That's the whole point of memory. The reason why we have memory is to, well, sorry, there's other reasons. One of the benefits of memory is having an intellect, having the ability to know from experience, remember experiences, so that you could. And now they're going to be they're going to be totally changed, which is
Yeah.
pretty cool.
Well, it was a very interesting theme for the whole episode is how does your memories define who you are? That was one of the major
Yeah,
themes, right? And so you saw changes in our characters' personalities. In particular, you saw a change in Pike's personality. When he was able to confront Zach in the last act. So it reminded me somewhat of a little bit like The Enemy Within, where Kirk was split into two by the transporter.
right.
And
They
if
yeah.
your intellect, if what you were saying, your memory is a driver of your intellect, and you're able to make decisions about your personality and about who you are because
Right.
of your memories of who you are. With that taken away, is that sort of similar to the evil Kirk in how the evil Kirk acts in The Enemy Within because he got incredibly
Yeah.
aggressive
And
and I get
interestingly enough, like, and something I think this episode also kind of made me wonder about, and again, I'm no neuroscientist, but I do read a lot about these things. We all know this. Smell is also very strong in our ability to like remember. Like sometimes the smell will
Mhm,
transport us to a French street where you
mhm.
remember a certain thing, like or whatever. I don't know why I said French street, but you know what I mean, that kind
The
of thing, like
French
to
smells.
Marseille, to
Yeah,
to Marseille. What's her name? Sandrine? Is it Sandrine's in
Sandrine. Always have Paris. Yeah. Yeah, that. But you're right
Oh,
about that. Olfactory sense is very powerful.
right. And so I thought that was interesting that they tried to tie memory aspects of memory also into emotion
Hmm.
in this episode. And so Pike, the emotion of being moved by what the gift that Batel gave him, I thought that was interesting how it like kind of kept him focused,
Hmm.
if you will. So even though he didn't know why he felt certain ways and was wanting to do certain things and had certain skill sets, he
Yeah.
knew that it was the right thing. He was living in the moment in a strange way. And I
Well,
love,
yeah.
there's a lot of, oh, sorry. So there's a lot to talk about in this episode. So I hope we can keep it at an hour, but I do want to say also, one of the things is initially that I missed that I didn't catch, in my first few viewings, the elder actor and like the way he spoke, the way the Kalar speak in general, but him in particular, and like the manner in which he speaks, it's not exactly medieval sounding, but there's like a certain way about it that's very like, it reminds me actually of like of Amish folk or Quaker folk in a way, that there's like a very intentional and like kind of like careful way of speaking.
Well, there
uh
was no. You saw a Kalar in the cage. You saw the
But he was
Kalar
like a
warrior.
kind of like a sharp tooth
Yeah,
monstery
but he never
kind of
spoke.
guy.
So,
He didn't speak, yeah.
so they basically took the hints from the costume. The costumers took the hint from what was there, but they were wide open to redefine the
To
Kalar. Yeah,
redefine the Kalar, yeah, it's true.
yeah, they didn't do the sharp tooth thing, which I thought was good. Um, so it was really really
I want to
interesting.
see some of those Kalar though. Otherwise, no,
Yeah,
I'm just kidding. It's like the Klingon thing. I'm like, I want the smooth-headed Klingons. I just want to see them. I'm sure we will at some point.
yeah, we might. But I thought it was very, I when I, you and I. So if we start getting into that infamous word canon, we're going to be in trouble. But
No, you're in a canon safe environment here.
yeah,
I just have a different. I just my area of interest is in a different part of canon than yours. That's all.
yeah. So what was interesting is what did we know about Rigel VII coming into this episode? We knew from and there was the extended version of the cage that was released long after. But really, the only thing that is canon is the clips of the cage that were presented in the menagerie because they were the ones that canon on screen, right? So, what do you know about that? You know that it was, I think it was 10 days between the first visit to Rigel 7 and Talos 4. Because I
Oh,
think
is
Pike,
that fresh, right?
yeah, I think Pike says it's exactly as it happened 10 days ago. I think he said 10 days. I
That's
should have looked it
crazy.
up.
Pike had a wild time on that
Well,
on that
because the
5 year mission.
Telosians, well, so you first hear about it when he's in his quarters with Boyce, and he says, I should have smelled trouble when I saw the armor, and so they talk about that, and Boyce says, "You blame yourself, and shouldn't I? We lost 3 people, including my yeoman," which was an interesting callback. Very much, they called the yeoman out in the cage.
It's cool.
Uh,
We finally met the yeoman, and frankly, I kind of agree. Last night, some folks were talking crap. Zach was a terrible yeoman. I feel like, or would have been like.
yeah, well, what's also interesting is, and
I hate Zach. I'm
yeah, no,
sorry.
Zach is crazy.
No, I'm glad I'm glad Zach is going home, as Pike said.
Yes.
Sorry, Carrie.
Well, so what was interesting is I would bet that most people for the last 57 years thought in their mind that the yeoman was a woman because
Oh
every
yeah, because
yeoman,
they're always
they're
women,
always
right?
women. Janice Rand, Yeoman Colt. So
Until TNG, right? TNG introduced like
TNG had, right, but right.
male
So that was an
yeomen and
interesting turn. Now, some people make the argument that they had to make Zach a man because of the big fight that he has with Pike. What we could put that aside.
and may
Yeah.
I just ask, in our militaries, uh, British military, French military, like most modern militaries, what's the yeoman role like? Is it always
Yeah,
female, or is it
no,
mixed? Or oh, okay, okay,
no. A yeoman could be any gender, and
got
it's
it.
just that in the original series, when you thought of yeoman, it
Right,
was
you always
always
thought of
there's always a woman. At least the two
yeah.
primary yeomans that I'm thinking of course, is Janice Rand. But also, what's also interesting now that I'm thinking about it is in Balance of Terror, Kirk says, "Whoever decided to assign me a female yeoman," and then Bones says, "What's the matter? You don't trust yourself?" And Kirk says, "I already have a woman to take care of. Her name's the Enterprise."
Yeah.
So
So
there
there
were
you
male
go. There.
yeomans actually.
Yeah.
I
So
just
there you
thought
go.
about that.
Nice.
Yeah, yeah.
that that's what we call a
Check.
canon check. Yeah, it's
Cannon
nice.
check. Yeah, cannonball check. But yeah,
Cannonball check.
yeah.
But
But
that is cool. That is
yeah,
neat.
but there was not a lot. You didn't really you knew just that little bit from the menagerie.
And we
Um,
never go to Rigel 7 except for that little tiny bit, right?
the
Ever. Like you
flashback, that the
yeah.
Telosian flashback is the only thing, is the only time you actually are
Yeah.
there.
I
Um,
thought it
yeah.
was cool how like in 5 years, like you can see that there's kind of I don't know if it's supposed to I guess it's meant to be the same castle, but you can see how the landscape has changed around it over the last 5 years and like how Zach's influence has they built a tower in the middle of it like now that extends like way higher than the original one
Mhm.
was. So I thought that was cool. Like did you notice the domes were still there though and
I
like
did.
the
Also,
yeah,
I
yeah, it
have to
was cool.
I have to correct myself because people who are watching this are screaming at already, because it was not Balance of Terror.
Oh, what was it in?
It was the Corbomite maneuver.
Oh, okay.
I just was thinking through it. It was the Corbomite maneuver. Um, is that scene? But yes, so they paid tribute to I think his name was Matt Whitlock, who did the painting, the map
Hmm.
painting, famous map painter. And you're
I
right.
would
That
love that. I would
yeah,
love a print of that, like a
yes,
fine art print. It'd be nice.
absolutely. It was brilliantly, beautifully done. And matte painting is such a lost art. And now, the VR wall, the AR wall is kind of replacing the need for matte paintings.
Yeah.
But anyway, they
Which,
did.
by
They
the
honored.
way, I that was the other thing is like at first I was like, oh my gosh, this kind of looks very AR wall
Oh,
ish. But
they
then when I watched it on the big screen, they don't stream it in 4K, but like we have a 4K big, like a larger screen. It was the effect is felt on a larger screen. Like it feel, and that's one of the things about Strange New Worlds is like, and all the new shows, Discovery onward, is that they're so high production. I mean, Star Trek always has had a great budget or a
mhm.
decent budget at least, but this feels like they're able to like do things that it feels like you're bringing like a film in every week. So yeah, the AR wall is like not a lot of shows are using it yet. I don't think the way Star Trek is. And one thing I noticed when I got to see it a little more crispy, as if you will, is that um, there was like a lot of scenes where like the foreground elements and the background elements just seem to like normally I can be like, oh, that's where the AR wall starts or whatever, but it felt like very seamless and they were doing things that like I was like, is that AR wall or green screen or like it
Yeah,
I don't always like kind of like try to look for those things. I don't know. I'm not a special effects expert by any means, but a lot of times you can see matte lines or like the hair's
yeah.
a little off or whatever. Like if I had a false background right now, you could see there would be like artifacting or whatever,
Not for me though.
and
It wouldn't be. No.
and like light interacts differently when you're in a real place, and that's the beauty of the AR wall is that like those like pinkish purple beautiful skies were reflecting on the actors and on their clothing and stuff, and that made it really feel beautiful. I thought Rigel Seven's actually kind of a cool spot, and we saw it in winter. And now we've seen it in the summertime in the cage, and now we've seen it in the wintertime. So we know that it has seasons,
Yeah,
uh, and we don't know if it's like Game of Thrones. The seasons could last for years. Maybe they have like
could be.
5 year summers and 5 year winters. Who knows?
It did seem very Game of Thrones, but it
Yeah,
seemed very medieval. It was medieval established from the cage.
yeah.
I actually noticed. I have a little bit of a different take on the AR wall. I think that the AR wall to me was very noticeable in this episode because I think that there wasn't a lot of stage dressing, right? When there's not a lot of stage dressing and most of your image is your actors sort of small against the large AR wall behind you, I think it becomes more noticeable, mostly because as a geek, I know it's there and I know that's what they use.
Right.
So,
The uncanny valley concept or whatever it's called,
yeah,
right? Like,
yeah. And I know there's a gap between the stage and the wall. And, my eye looks for that gap. And
yeah.
it's just,
Well,
I
I
yeah,
was blissfully unaware of. I was like, wow, this is cool.
yeah.
And the other show that does it really well was at least in season one of The Mandalorian. I thought that was like revolutionary.
Mhm.
There's like a softness to it, like you don't get like harsh sunlight, or anything like that. Sorry to go on this sidetrack, but did you see this You're going to Las Vegas, so you're gonna see the sphere. Have you seen
Yeah,
like
I've seen video. I'm looking forward to seeing this crazy sphere. I've seen a couple videos of it, like on my little phone or
the
whatever.
outside's just the tip of the iceberg? Haha, no pun intended. But inside the sphere, it's like a 4K resolution screen that's all around you, and you're seeing performances. So U2, I think, is doing the first
Wow.
musical performance there. But like watching movies there, watching anything is a whole different experience because it's the largest sphere. Like it's like a planetarium, but like the whole thing's a screen, and it's supposed to be like ultra high definition. So yeah, it's gonna be something else to watch movies and concerts and
I would be worried
other things
about
there. Yeah,
sensory overload. You know,
that could be a thing. It's true.
so one of the things that
But you could just close your eyes. That's what I
yeah,
would do.
like it's totally unrelated, but a few years ago I took a trip and I went to the Vatican and I walked through the Vatican Museum. And if you go to the Vatican Museum and you're walking down these beautiful ornate hallways, they're covered with art everywhere. There's no white space. It's art everywhere you look. It's just art everywhere. And I'm not talking about the Sistine Chapel. That's a whole other thing. But this is just the halls of the
Oh
Vatican.
yeah,
And it's like I got overwhelmed because you don't know where to look, and there's nothing that sort of centers you. And so yeah, I got this sense of sensory overload because everything was so busy. And so I
yeah.
would worry about something like I love planetariums. I mean, I love planetariums. So it'll be interesting to see this kind of thing.
I bet they'll have science type of exhibits or installments and stuff.
Yeah.
At some point. I wonder if they're gonna time anything to do with Star Trek. I don't know if that venue's too expensive to do stuff with Paramount cutting costs and everything. I doubt they'll
Yeah.
put together a show at that venue, but at some future point, it'd be cool to get like a Star Trek event
Oh yeah. I
at the Sphere. I feel like it's right up Star Trek's alley.
I saw someone tweet that they should have zero there because they should basically put zero on the
Oh
sphere
my
from Prodigy
gosh,
to sort of
that's fantastic.
save Star Trek Prodigy kind of theme. But
Oh my god, I'm gonna tweet at the Sphere and see if it'll do it because
yeah,
you can tweet. It's on Twitter. You can tweet at it. So, all
yeah.
right, but back to this episode. So, like, anyways, what were we talking about? Do you remember? Before I sidetracked.
It was the tinnitus, the Lotus Eaters. We were
It's
talking about
that's the
um
great thing about this episode of
yeah,
Starfleet So Ill is that we can use this gag all night.
and we will.
We will. We're gonna
So
use this gag.
make it a drinking game. No drinking game. How many times is Ken and Sorrell going to use that gag? What were we talking about? We were talking about Rigel VII.
Oh yeah, and so
Okay.
you were saying something about like the AR. That's right. Now I remember
Yeah,
how we
yeah,
got on the sphere, the AR wall, and we were just comparing notes basically on
yeah.
that technology. But overall, I would say it's a net positive.
Oh, it's
At
yeah,
least the actors all say like it changes everything, and I think you can see it because like in the fight. Okay, there's still this episode definitely is the first one to take a dip for me a little bit in my enthusiasm this season. However, there's a lot of great moments, like individual moments that stand out to me. One in particular is like, they were talking about how like the air wall is so good for acting in that rebellion sequence. Like you really get like great performances from Anson Mount. Like he's pounding this like rock and he's like saying all these things. And he's like trying to remember. He's like that guy's with us and like this doesn't feel right. And like you feel that like the the confusion and like the like kind of the fear turning into like more of a uh, like a like a resolve, if you will. Like that
Hmm.
I got to find out what's going on. And that's the other thing is that like I think Pike is the most in his senses still. Like for some reason he's able to hold on a little bit. I think more maybe it's because he's a leader, is make used to making decisions on his gut, I guess, right? So like that kind of maybe explains it. But yeah, I think the central theme there, he kind of says it at the end where it's like, you know, the field doesn't make you forget who you are, it shows you who you truly are. And so like that was kind of a neat new spin on the naked now or naked time idea of
Mm.
like getting to find out more about these characters. So now this time around, I'm like looking at it from that perspective, and maybe we did get some interesting ideas of who all of our characters are.
Well, including the
Spock's an
ones on the ship.
yeah, yeah. Like I was gonna say, Spock's an interesting person. Like, he keeps doing these things. He keeps quoting rules and stuff. Like, like it's interesting how later when he's with Savick, he's so different as like a leader and a teacher than he is like with Ortega's. Like he's just frustrating Ortega's. Like that's all he's doing. Like logic is whatever. But at one point, where I think he makes the leap, and again, this shows who his true character is. Like she's talking about how like she knows what she's doing, like she feels it, this is her station, she flies the ship, like she's convinced that like she's found her focus, like that was her emotional like point, or whatever. And I love when he's just like, I believe you, that's what you do. Like that was like great, like that's all she needed was like the space.
Yeah.
She had someone to believe in her and like the space to do her thing. Oh my gosh, like I'm all over the place. I apologize.
No, it's cool. It's
I'm getting
interesting.
excited because I'm remembering like I didn't take like too many notes on this episode, but now I'm remembering certain like fun scenes where I was like, oh yeah, that's like a cool thing.
Well, there were lots of really cool character beats, like the
Yeah.
Ahura and the oatmeal beat.
Right.
Definitely not the oatmeal, which was
Right.
interesting. And I thought, my first thought was when Ahura started having her memory problems, I immediately thought about Nomad and Think Music and all
I
that.
did think about that too.
Yeah.
So what is the deal? I can't. It's been a while since I've seen the Changeling. So what was the deal? Like, does that mean she forgot everything that she's experiencing right now? Like, does that does the after Nomad
Yeah,
Uhura
I mean that's always
not
been
have these memories anymore, or how does that work?
no. I think it's a good question, right? Um, I, the whole concept was re-educating her, right?
Right.
And so whether or not she was able to reclaim her personal memories is a whole other thing. But they were, Chapel was teaching her how to teaching her how to read, which was interesting that you had that scene with Chapel and
Yeah.
Ahura, considering the dynamic between what's happening in Strange New Worlds. And Ahura's like Bluey, and so that was interesting. Oh yeah, um,
Oh yeah, she's like tossing
yeah,
her hair around. I forgot about it. It's such a terrible thing they did to her.
yeah,
That was
no,
like stakes were higher in the in '60s television. You could just lose your whole backstory.
right. Well, and Nomad killed Scotty, and then was able
Scotty,
to
right?
repair Scotty, but wasn't able to reset Ahura's memories. But anyway, so that's what I thought about for a moment when her memory was going. And you know, it's interesting that that silly line, Bluey, also happened in sick bay, and now she's also lying on the bed, and she's like, definitely not the oatmeal as the drug was taken in. So Ahura is I really like what the actress is doing with Ahura.
Yeah,
Um, I think that what you saw with Ortegas was really cool. And I liked what Spock was doing with sort of creating the pads, and then suddenly he couldn't read it, which
yeah, it
was
was
also
crazy.
a little bit weird because if he couldn't read the data pad, even if Ortegas was able to fly the ship, how was she able to read the console if Spock couldn't read the pad? So there was inconsistencies. And I messaged you in the middle of my watching the episode. I texted you and I said, isn't the Enterprise in a really dangerous debris field and nobody's doing anything right now? And that really was like freaking me out.
Well, Pike said some, or Ortega said something at the beginning of the episode that like you just needed someone really good to do adjustments every 20 minutes. Otherwise, so they had like they had like 20 minutes before, and it kind of felt like that before the rock started, because Ortega's never made the adjustment that
Right.
she was supposed to. Um, but I agree. There's like a ton. If like guys did a really great job of nitpicking on
We
on
tend to do
like
that. Yeah.
the salon, because I was like, whoa, there was like stuff that, and when I watched it, I was like, oh yeah, I saw all the things that like, and we're not gonna go into it.
No.
We'll be here for like 2 hours just talking about stuff. But aside from that, though, in principle, I mean, like if I had to head canon it, like, and again, it's like unknown science to them too. They don't really know what's going on. So that's where I always just kind of file those things under, is that like maybe when Ortega's found her focus, all of a sudden she could read
Yeah.
the console again. Like she kind of like, at first it's like, I don't know what this means, but then it's like, yeah, I actually do know, because it's kind of like typing. I touch type. I don't look at the keyboard, and there's times where I become aware of it, and I'm like, whoa, this is wild. Like, how am I not looking? How do my fingers just know where those letters are? Like, I'm not looking at the keyboard at all, but I'm typing correctly, and it's just like your
And if you
muscle memory
think
is a
about
power.
it,
Yeah,
right. If
right,
you start thinking about it, then you start messing up, right? If you just let the
right.
muscle memory
If
do
you
it,
let,
then it just does,
yeah, it's
right?
wild. So
Yeah.
yeah, so like that's the kind of flow state, I guess, Erica got herself into when she was just like, I know what my mission is, I
Yeah.
know what I got to do, and so that's how I would explain
Yeah, it doesn't,
it.
and that's fine. I've just, for her to have no, for her to do those crazy phaser firing,
I
corkscrewing
love
things.
that. I have to forgive
Yeah.
the show, because
Yeah.
that was the one thing I loved the most. I love to see Enterprise doing spectacular things. Just like you love to hear the TARDIS engines in Doctor Who. It's like the best thing. You're in a tense situation. The hear like it doesn't matter that it's Deus Ex Machina, but in a tense situation, you just want to hear those TARDIS engines. And in Star Trek, when the Enterprise just does spectacular things, it just turns me on so much. And
Yeah.
so
Oh, I
her
agree.
needle and thread thing, it was phenomenal. Like I watched it like 4 or 5 times. I was like, oh, and that's the other thing, is I can't wait till I don't, nothing's certain anymore. But if this season gets a 4K release, also, it's gonna look spectacular on Blu-ray. I can't wait. The show is phenomenal. It's like in terms of how it looks. But you're right. It was definitely a little bit of get on the like yeehaw, like the horse saddle, type of thing. I didn't mind.
Yeah, I mean, I agree, and I do hope it gets a 4K release. I'm disappointed that Picard 3 season 3 does not have a 4K on the schedule. By the way, it's a silly oversight, in my opinion. Maybe they'll do it next year after everyone buys the Blu-ray. But
That's how it's always
yeah.
been. Like I definitely, for Star Trek, have always fallen into the racket. Like I've always bought the physical media. That's why, like, when Father like is like, oh, you gotta buy the physical media, I'm like, Father, I've bought like every version of the physical. Whenever they released brand 2 more minutes of extra footage, I was like, I had to have it. Like it's
Yeah, I know what you mean. Like, well, for
like
example, it goes beyond the shows, right? So now La La Land music, they released 5 years ago. I think I have it right here. Pardon the noise. They released this, which
what is
is
that?
this is their release of all the music from the original show.
Wow, that's
Right there.
fantastic.
And lot of liner notes. So this is incredibly remastered, redone, but they released this in 2012. Now La La Land is about to release with the first one a series. They're basically cutting this up. So this guy was like multi hundreds of dollars, but I was like, okay, doesn't matter. I'm gonna get it, right? Because I love the music. I'm a music
Yeah, me too. I'm a
theme.
music nut, but I
Yeah,
didn't
I'm
know
a
about
music
that
nut.
set. That's cool.
So now they're cutting this and they're gonna re-release this in 2 discs because that's like five episodes at a time. And there's a part of me that's saying I should buy those, but it's essentially this. But there's a part of me that's like I should buy those. So I totally get what you're talking about with buying every iteration of
Well,
physical media.
yeah, not only that, because one thing that we music nuts might be able to like relate to on is that like there's always the idea that like a recording, when a recording is recorded, the master's such a high definition, like it has
Yeah.
everything, you know what I mean? And so there are things that like remastering a recording, kind of bring
Yeah.
that's new. So it might be worth getting a newer edition if it is also remastered,
It's,
So I
no,
don't
it
know
is.
if they've done that yet.
It's actually
If it's the
using the
same master, then you're fine. You
it's
should
the
get
same master, right? But there's
it.
new liner notes written by Jeff Bond, who
Oh, there
writes
you go.
But
See,
it's
now you have to
but anyway, just an
get.
example of them recutting things every day. For people who do not have this, and this was released over 10 years ago, um, it's brilliant. It's fantastic. And if you are, I've never heard the Star Trek music as crystal clear
Oh,
as
wow, that's
this.
great.
And so if you don't have it, I don't want to be an advertisement, but if you don't have it, look at that stuff because that's really cool that they're releasing it again. Um, but yeah, so they're going to release Picard season 3 without the 4K, and then at some point, one would hope they're going to release it in 4K. But anyway, we digress. So
We do.
yeah,
I'm having apparently dinner brought in, and my tumbly was rumbling. I don't know if you could hear it through the mic, but it was like.
if you're going to have
So
dinner brought in, I might have dinner brought in too.
it's
Um,
it's because Gates McFadden watched this show and she saw me
yeah.
eating a sandwich, and so now I'm like, oh, I should just always eat on the show. So
Right.
so there you go. So I apologize in advance. But actually, we're almost done with the
We're
discussion. We
almost
like
done.
to keep these at an hour.
Yeah. One thing I
Um,
do want to mention that was interesting is that, this concept of relationships, right? So Pike had the pendant that, you know, um, the captain, what's the captain's name? They said the Lotus Eaters are getting it.
Battelle,
Battelle, thank you.
Captain Battelle. I don't know if we've gotten her first name.
We haven't, no.
I wonder if okay.
But what's interesting is the relationships. What makes up a person, right? Our memories. What really makes up our memories? And is it the people that we know? Whether it's our friends, our colleagues, our lovers, our family. And so I think that one of the themes or the morals of this episode was that relationships are important because you had the field Kalar say he didn't want to know. He didn't want to know about his family.
That
He
was a
didn't want to,
powerful performance,
yeah.
by the way. I loved
Oh, he
his
was an
his
incredible
role.
actor. Reminded me of the relationship between Boyce and Pike from the
Oh,
Natural.
interesting. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I wonder if we will ever see Boyce turn up. A lot of people want Jeffrey Combs to play him. But anyways, carry on.
No, maybe Jeffrey Combs is in everything. So that I was just saying that the idea that the pennant reminded him of this friendship, and it was a guide to guide him home, and it was sort of this mariner's, guide to guide, guide sailor. So there was that sort of double edged meaning to it. But I thought it was really cool that you talk about the relationship. It was Ortega's relationship to her job. It was Mabenga's relationship to Leon. It was Pike relationship to Patel. So it was this whole concept of how important people are in your life. That's where your memory, a lot of your memories come from who's in your life. And I know I don't want either of us to get emotional, so I'll be a little bit um
Well, I
so
can't get emotional because I got a hot dog from Captain Kirk. So hey,
there you go. That episode had so many references to hot dogs. It was crazy.
But I
Um,
love there. I saw a meme of Captain Kirk always seems to be eating. Uh, I think Ryan Thomas Riddle, he's a writer on Twitter, and he
yeah.
tweets about Star Trek. He loves the original series. It was like, oh, they kept that, and then someone made a meme of him eating the apple, and and Kirk eating hot dogs.
I mean,
It's like
let's.
so funny.
So there was a couple of times where Kirk would eat, like, I think he was eating crackers on the bridge, and they always have, especially in the
That's
early episodes, he would have coffee.
I
They'd,
love that. I love
they'd
that.
have coffee
It's a
on the
shame they
bridge.
lost that.
Yeah.
It's great. That's the kind
Um,
of
and in that same episode, the Corbomite maneuver, Kirk is all upset because he's brought green leaves. What are these green leaves? And McCoy's like, "Your weight was off a little bit. You remember?" So that was interesting. But yeah, Kirk, food and Star Trek, right? I mean, I always the big scene with food in Star Trek is to me is Star Trek 4 when they order the pizza, um, which is an interesting thing. But yeah, so relationships.
I had to take a bite. That's
No,
why I went off
it looks
camera,
it
but
looks really good. Looks
but
really
food
good.
and that scene's one of my favorite food and Star Trek scenes. Also, actually,
Yeah.
Jillian Taylor is who Antonia should have been, but we'll talk about that another time.
No, Antonia should have been Edith Keeler.
Wow, you're so
Antonia in
radical.
Generations should have been Edith Keeler.
What he like went back in time to get her?
No, because the idea was in the Nexus.
Oh, sorry, the Nexus.
Yeah.
No, but I just mean in real life, there was a real life Antonia.
Oh, there was a real life Antonia. Yes, yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
I meant she should have been the the love. But you're right. Maybe I guess Edith Keeler. That's an interesting thing that I don't know.
Well,
I
and
still think
Joan
Jillian
Collins was around. I mean,
or Carol Marcus. She's a good contender too.
or
And
Carol
Ruth.
Mark.
There's Ruth also. Are we gonna meet
Yeah.
Ruth
Well,
in
I don't think it
Strange
would
New
have been
Worlds?
Ruth. I think the perfect one would have been Edith Keeler, and it would have totally changed the dynamic of that movie with people who, I mean, original series fans would have just gone nuts if they would have had. Although there was no scene really with Antonia. You heard her call
Right.
Jim, but they would have had to have made a scene with Edith and Kirk. But anyway,
Yeah.
so I think that this episode is not one of their top ones. They've had some amazing episodes this year. The second episode with the Latin name that I'm forgetting, but that episode, the courtroom episode, I thought was really really
Ad
strong.
ad astra per aspera. Per
Yeah.
aspera.
Um, tomorrow and tomorrow and tomorrow basically splintered the Star Trek universe. We'll talk about that some other time, into a whole other thing. But this episode had its moments. The things that if I were to rate this episode, I think that I would give this episode somewhere between 5 and 6 Lotus Eaters out of 10. It's it was some nice, really nice callbacks to the original series, to the first pilot, and to the menagerie. But there's also major big holes in this. Like, why didn't let's assume that the crew was affected by the memory challenges when they went there the first time. How did they not realize that all of that equipment was missing? Who's quartermastering the equipment, and what was all that equipment doing there for a quick 4-hour mission? I mean, it's almost like there was more equipment for a 4-hour mission than the Minnow had for a 3-hour tour, right? So Minnow had a lot of equipment for a 3-hour tour. Anyway, I told you, Gilligan's Island. I'll get Gilligan's Island in every time, least expected.
So you said like a 6, a 5 or a 6? Is that what you said?
Yeah, 5 or 6. Yeah.
I was originally going to give this episode a 7, but I think I'm going to land it at an 8 because I do think that like for me the things that stood out like on this most recent rewatch after hearing everything like was that like I like the idea of like getting under their psyches, like a new aspect
Yeah.
of all of them. And so yeah, to me it was good. It's not an episode that I would watch like right away again if I didn't have to review it or talk about it. Um, but when I'm doing a marathon, I certainly won't skip it.
No, no, no.
It's not a skipper.
Yeah, no, it's not a skipper. There have been, again, like Gilligan's Island, but there are definitely skipper episodes of the original series, even, darest we say, "And the children shall lead," or "The Way to Eden." But yeah, it's not, "And the children shall lead" or "The Way to Eden." It's not one of those. So I think, and it did have some interesting points to say about memory and
I never skipped The Way to Eden.
No.
Heading out to Eden, yay,
Yay,
brother.
brother. But I don't think I've seen that episode in
I
years.
love that episode. I've always
But they
loved it
have
since I
it.
was a kid too.
They have all of that stuff on here. They have all of
Oh,
those
that's
songs in
awesome.
there. Yeah, it's crazy.
That's amazing.
Um, but yeah, so yeah, yeah, it was very interesting. Again, some great character moments with Ortegas. The other thing that I thought was interesting from listening to people comment about this episode is it brought up some pretty serious thoughts about real world conditions like Alzheimer's, right? And people who have had Alzheimer's in their family felt like this episode hit a bit perhaps too close to home in that effect. So interesting thing to consider too.
Another shout out to Slan. The conversation I heard
The salons are
where you,
supposed to be private. Just remember.
it's okay. I don't know.
I can just
I
see
think I'm a
Stanley and
founding.
Trev be like, so hell. But
I think I'm a charter panelist or a founding
yeah, well, you
charter.
are.
I'm the Loki. I can be a Loki and start telling everyone about
Yeah. No,
it.
but I have to say, before we wrap this up, I just want to have a shout out. First of all, I appreciate you, Sohail, for so many reasons. But you were the one who invited me to join the discussions that we had during Picard season 3. I think that's where that started. And I met so many wonderful people thanks to you. And I've discovered an entirely new and now I'm going to get emotional, an entirely new Star Trek family thanks to you. And so I really appreciate you, my friend, and I owe you a lot because not only have I become such good friends with you, but through you, I've met a lot of amazing people, some of whom I'm going to actually see in person in Vegas in a few weeks.
Absolutely. I don't know. I did nothing.
Not sure
I
you
just
did
like
that.
to talk about Star Trek and
Yeah.
anyone who who I feel like birds of a feather flock together, and you eventually start finding all the other people who like to start talk about Star Trek and not not like like not like get bent out of shape about it. I think that's like the definer of like the kind of folks
Yes, that's true.
that it's like at the end of the discussion we're all friends, and we can go and hang out and stuff like that, and I'm not going to get mad at someone for disliking, just because I like a show doesn't mean that my friend has to like it, and it doesn't invalidate your love of that franchise or the other installments in that show. So yeah, I that's the kind of vibe I find, and when I find folks like that, it's worth talking to them. It's cool.
Yep, I agree. And thank you for finding me.
But if they ever mess with Captain Kirk, I will. No, I'm just kidding. I was gonna say something. I don't know what I was gonna say.
They've already
I was
messed with
gonna be.
Captain Kirk, but that's right.
No, they haven't messed with him too enough.
Yeah.
They gotta mess with him a little more.
Yeah.
That's what I say. But yeah, so I would give this episode an 8. I'm really excited about the next episode, which we can't really speculate with me, so because I've seen it once.
Wow.
Yeah,
You and your top secret things and seeing all these episodes. You have the Guardian of Forever, don't you? You can just jump
I
forward.
do. Carl's my friend.
Carl's your friend. Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
Carl's cool. Carl and I are cool. So you get to speculate. What do you think's gonna What do you think's going on with Spock
What's
next
up?
week?
I saw the Ready Room clip, and I thought that the fixed point looked suspiciously like a modernized version of the Bajoran wormhole first, but I don't think that's what it is. But Spock wakes when they show the scene of Spock waking up. They have a point of being really tight on his face, where they don't show his eyebrows, they don't show his ears, and he looks at his hands, and his hands look decidedly flesh toned as opposed to green. So my thought is that somehow whatever happened made our favorite Vulcan, or half Vulcan, half human, all human. So that's my speculation. And the way that they were looking at him at around sitting, standing around the sickbay table, if that's what happens, I would just think to myself, God, it's too bad that we don't have McCoy in this episode, because I could just hear what McCoy would say about Spock becoming all human if that's what it is. But that's my speculation. So
Very cool. Well, I can't say I
you
can
can't say
neither
a thing.
confirm nor deny. but at least and then audience, be sure to speculate below about what you think's happening next week. We'd love to hear what you think. Let us know what you thought of this episode. This conversation was very casual and informal, and if you can't vibe with that, I'm sorry. But if you can, let us know in the comments below what you thought. Also, there's gonna be a live chat, Ken, tomorrow at 3, which is today at 3, which is now. Well, which was an
Just
hour
now.
ago, depending on your present place perspective and time.
Timey-wimey.
Very
Timey-wimey.
timey. Starfleet Oil is a timey wimey wibbly wobbly kind of show.
Yeah.
But anyways, so in the live chat you can talk to me and Ken if Ken's there. If not, you can just talk to me. I'll definitely be there. And we've been talking this whole time, so I don't know why I'm saying it at the
Yeah,
end. But I what
seriously.
yeah, what
Giving
I
away the
will
trade
say
secrets. Yeah.
is smash the like button for us. And then also, if you are not a subscriber, if you could subscribe, it would help us out a lot. And other than that, Ken, what have you got going on that you'd like to tell people about and promote? Where can people find you on the internet if they want to follow you on the myriad social media networks
Oh gosh, myriad.
that everyone's on now?
So I am a co-founder. Yeah, crazy. I spent one night this week just getting ourselves on threads and all that crazy stuff. So I'm a co-founder of a company called The Talk About a Company, and we are a health awareness company that brings together causes and community and celebrities and different nonprofits. We focus on a variety of different causes, but we started with epilepsy because two of my co-founders have children with epilepsy. And I worked in epilepsy for many years at the Epilepsy Foundation. So if you go to @talkaboutit.org on Twitter or on Threads, if you go to the Talk About It company on Facebook, you'll find various videos of us featuring a variety of celebrities, including a number of Star Trek celebrities, including Brent Spiner and Chris Pine and Zachary Quinto and Todd Stashwick. And it's really
That's
great.
very cool. You
Yeah,
guys
we've
got a
got some.
great lineup of folks.
Yeah, thanks. So that's me. That's where you can find me. And on Twitter, me personally, you can find me at Ken Lowenberg on Twitter. So
Right on. All right, very cool. So, this air. We're recording this on Friday night, but this airs on Saturday at 3 p.m. And we're gonna try it now that we're caught up. We're gonna try to do these every week again, so that we're back on track. And eventually, we'll go back to doing live groups. So you've been coming on to our TAS discussions here and there. So we'll get back to those soon as well. Once there's another gap. When's
yeah,
the next gap though? I don't know when's the next gap.
mid-August. I mean, I don't know what
So
they're
around
doing
mid
next
August we'll
year.
resume our
Yeah,
animated series discussions.
yeah,
But yeah, it's a lot of fun. I love doing this. But as you know, we were ending the program with like the Alzheimer's things. My father, who recently passed away, had a form of dementia, and it was kind of this last viewing was very cool because just the thing is that about he didn't have Alzheimer's, but he had a form of kind of a different kind of dementia slash memory loss that's different from Alzheimer's. I don't remember the exact like diagnosis or whatever, but
mhm.
he interestingly, one of the things that resonated with me is I realized like he always told his life story over and over again, and we always thought, oh, that's a function of like he doesn't remember that he told the story, right? But maybe he was just telling the story so that he could remember it and never forget it.
Oh,
And that
maybe.
was an interesting thing that just kind of like went aha in my brain. And I was like, oh, dad was like not maybe not forgetting, he was remember like that's the most important thing to him was his story, like who he is or who he thought he was rather, which he was great. So so I like that. And so that was very powerful kind of thing. And I like that even a run of the mill Star Trek episode that didn't do much in terms of like progressing things or whatever still has themes that we can like think about and dissect and stuff. So yeah, watch Star Trek.
Absolutely. The best that Star Trek does. Even the
It
mediocre
does
of
do
Star Trek does.
that. All right. Well, thank you for joining me tonight. It was a real pleasure, and you did a good job as my co-pilot. We kind of look like we're in the shuttle, actually.
We
With
do,
that,
right? Yeah.
it's like
Just have to,
the
we have to go the
windows.
same direction though if we're like moving through. Yeah.
It's true.
We have to rehearse that. Yeah. So
Well, live long and prosper, everyone, and we will see you next time. See here.